with the town here. We'll let Chief Gallant here introduce himself after a quick summary of my background and experience. Been the chief of police in Bath since 2021. Before that, I was deputy chief for 3 years. Prior to that, I was a detective and I worked my way up through the ranks in Bath my whole career. I was also in the Army National Guard. I retired as lieutenant colonel. I'm also on the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program assessment team and committee. So I do a lot of assessments for accreditation of different police departments. I did the pre-assessment here at Damariscotta back a couple of years ago. So I'm used to going and looking at different police departments and doing assessment. I've been a member of the Maine Chiefs of Police Association since I made deputy chief. And we do go around and we do these assessments for departments that request it through our services. Chief Gallant here can introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Gallant. I'm the chief in Yarmouth. I've been in Yarmouth for 30 years, chief for the last 6. I'm also came up through Yarmouth. I did a few years during college in Kennebunk as a reserve at their police department. I'm also a member of the Maine Chiefs of Police. I'm part of their board. I'm the representative from Cumberland County that sits on their board. We're an accredited agency, so I'm glad to see that Damariscotta is as well. And just here as representative of Maine Chiefs, and the best part about doing these kind of things with other departments is you learn about them, and it kind of forces you to learn about yourself, look at your PD, what they're doing. And I think that it helps with professionalism across the state and kind of see what's working well, what isn't, and it just makes everybody happy. So thank you.
And the third member of the assessment team is the Augusta Police Chief Kevin Lully. He's another 30-year veteran, worked his way up through the ranks at Augusta PD. So combined, we have like 84, 85 years of professional police experience, and a lot of that in the administration side. So pretty well versed. We are from somewhat larger departments than you have here, but not that much bigger. So the flow tonight is really, we're here for you to provide us your feedback on your police department. You know, we can go over the basic overview of what our assessment report is looking at. It is a draft report. It's not finalized yet. You're the last kind of piece of the puzzle here to get the community feedback. We did go out into the community. We spoke to a lot of business owners, spoke to a few residents to get some feedback. This is just a good opportunity now to have it in a public forum. So with that, I can open it up to preliminary questions right now, or we can kind of go into what we're going to be covering. Are there any preliminary questions? And everyone here is a resident, correct, of Damariscotta. It's a lovely little town. All right. And if you've lived here less than 3 years, can you raise your hand? Okay, and everybody else, several decades and whatnot. Great, perfect. Okay, so these assessments cover a lot of different things. We look at basically the department's mission, goals, and objectives. We look at community relations. We look at budgeting. Is it adequately staffed? Is the facility in good working condition for police, police operations? We look at patrol. If it was a larger department, we would look at specialized departments within there, like investigations or something, school resource officers. In this case, it's mainly looking at the patrol operations of Damariscotta PD. We look at the high liability things that get police departments and towns in trouble, such as uses of force, police chases, unlawful arrests, stuff like that. We look at how they manage property and evidence. A lot of this was covered in the accreditation assessment. So we're in good shape there because we've got a good background to fall back on. But that was a year and a half ago. So we're going to look kind of where are we at right now, because every 3 years you go up for another reaccreditation. So it's a continual process. We also look at the personnel within the department. We look at certain things like morale. Are they getting the right type of training? Do they have the right type of equipment? Do we offer like competitive salary and benefits as compared to other police departments? I don't know if you guys have seen anything in the news. Law enforcement, we're hurt for people big time. We've not seen the applicants we used to see. So those few people that are qualified are able to kind of pick and choose which departments they want to go to. So as towns and cities and sheriff's offices and state police, we have to offer things to those younger officers to get them motivated to work in this career. We do look at policies and procedures within the department, and again, we're on good footing here because the Damariscotta PD is accredited, so they've got a good basis to build off of there. Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, very good. All right, so we have some sample questions that we asked the community when we went out. I can kind of go over these one by one, or I can kind of read them all right now. Let it stew in your brains, and then as things pop up, you can raise your hand and provide feedback. But really, we're gonna kind of, I'll guide you, but we're gonna turn it over to you at this point. So with that, I'll go through the questions that we asked. So first question we asked was, how responsive is the police department to interdepartmental needs or community needs? In this case, interdepartmental or departmental would be like talking to the fire department, talking to public works, saying how well they work together. Perception of the PD in the community, this was a big one that we asked downtown and around. Officers and command staff, are they respectful to other employees in the community? How is the police department equipped? Are they equipped and keep that equipment maintained to an acceptable degree of use? Do the officers look and act professional? Are you proud of them and their behavior out in the public? Are they active at community events? Are they visible in town? Do you feel that they're around and that things are safe and that they're doing their job like they're supposed to? Are they open to constructive criticism? How would you rate their public relations? And do you have suggestions for improvement? So those were the questions we asked the public. So we'll go back to the first question here. How responsive do you feel, if you ever interacted with the police department, how responsive are they of your needs as a citizen of Damariscotta? Anyone want to begin and start off?
I did a deer once, not that long ago, and they were super responsive and great.
It's funny because I just had the exact same conversation with another Damariscotta who hit a deer. Police were there within minutes.
Yeah, they were great.
She greatly appreciated it. Yeah,
Totally, and
Good.
the person who responded was so nice and great.
quick response. And the quick response is something that a lot of people take for granted when they have a full-time police department. I think in our city, we clocked our response time, the longest we would have to take to get somewhere is 7 minutes. You don't see that when you're out in the boondocks or you're relying on a sheriff's office or the state police, because you may not have a police officer. Or if you do, they're the only one, and then their backup is half an hour to an hour away. So that is important, responsiveness. Anybody, yes,
Jason Warlick was the first person we met in Damariscotta on moving day,
yeah,
when the moving truck couldn't make the turn into our driveway off of Bristol Road. And the movers were really big guys. They said, we're just gonna park right here on the side of the road. And we're like, I don't think, and he now, he was Chief Warlick. Back then he wasn't, but he showed up and very great, negotiated with these guys, basically said, no, you can't. And told them where they could, and we moved in and we thought, okay, well, that was a good introduction to the town, so. Anyway.
and that's what you guys all want in your police department officers, correct? You want that service and ability to talk to people and perfect, that's
Kept
good.
everything calm and solved the problem.
Any other experiences that anyone's had here with the police?
I've had a couple, but I'll just name, the most frequent one was, I had this wounded fox in my yard. And I was trying to decide if it was gonna make it, or if I needed to call, some kind of not a warden, no, somebody who would help it. And so I got into a little bit of a conundrum with the next door neighbors who wanted to call the warden who would come and shoot it. And I said, no, we need to help this. So I called Eric Halpin at the time was the one who came. And he was very calm and he was very helpful. And it all ended up safely, and the poor little wounded fox ended up going to the rehab place, but didn't make it. But at least that's the way that I was hoping it would go, and not just come and shoot this thing that might be, I don't know, it was a difference of opinion between neighbors about how to handle it, and he did a beautiful job. So I was really happy that he's there.
All right, you first and then you, go ahead.
I'd like to commend the department, particularly Chief Lessier, for how he has worked with, a local political organization around, management of protesters and rallies, rally participants, counter protesters. Tensions were pretty high after the Kirk, assassination. And, Chief Lessier was very clear. He's like, what is it that you want and need from us around this? So we talked about how police presence would be welcome, the level of police presence and visibility. And, couldn't be happier with the way in which the chief has handled, our concerns as participants in expressing our First Amendment rights and, working in the community and trying to have as small an impact on the businesses as possible, being respectful of the businesses and having that open dialogue. And I would really look forward to that continuing under new chief.
That's great. That's a good point. It is such a fine line where you try to balance public safety versus freedom of speech, try to keep everyone happy without letting anyone get hurt. And it's difficult to do. I'm glad that you had a good experience here.
Joan, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been great working with you, you know, and I'm glad we were able to mutually handle it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And that's an issue
Thanks for your
that's
service.
facing a lot of police departments, communities, and trying to find that balance. So it's great that you had that experience.
I had a great experience with, again, Jason Wallach, when having some questions about the structure and some of the activities of the police department. He was very open and welcoming and answered all my questions and everything. So I know he's no longer here, but I would hope that our next chief would also engage in that same.
I think there's something to be said. Yes, he's not, well, no longer here, but he kind of went to a little bit of a
Yeah.
promotion at a larger agency.
Exactly where he wanted to go.
Sergeant Halpin now is the chief at another agency,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
kind of like speaks very well to Damariscotta and the officers that come out of this community. So thank you for that. Any other feedback on community relations?
I've been here since 2011. And I've had multiple needs for a police officer, in varying degrees of urgency. And each time it was just super. The behavior, the result, the interaction. And that's one of the reasons when I was shopping for a town in 2011, I definitely considered what Rising Tide was doing. Because I wanted a co-op and the theater and the library, and I wanted to make sure my police were part of the community. Not just an isolated entity. I like the fact that they were meshed in with the town.
I see someone, the town posted on their Facebook page, the advertisement looking for a chief and looking for feedback. And I see one of the comments, someone just posted a picture of Andy Griffith. That's kind of that's kind of what you want, right? I don't know if that's, right? Is anyone aware of any negative interactions and they get thick skins, any negative interactions with the Damariscotta PD?
I'm aware of one, but it is not firsthand information, so I was hesitant, but since you're asking
Yeah.
for it. We did have one officer again, and this was around one of the demonstrations, who said that the police tolerated us. And which was, a rather unusual term for people expressing their First Amendment rights peacefully. And then that same officer I saw at a parade sort of picking on a young man with some disabilities and treating him in a way that I did not find respectful.
So normally in those cases, as a chief, I would want you to come forward and talk to me so that we could. figure
I
it
know
out.
that the first incident was reported. The second incident that I witnessed, I did not. So that's on me, but.
All right,
So I had a friend visit who was a guess she was a legal resident of the United States, but she was from Nicaragua. And she, we were somewhere in town, taking a walk through town, and she saw a police pickup truck with the thin blue line flag on it. And she was horrified, you know, because she comes from California, where that symbol is considered provocative because it kind of rose out of the Black Lives Matter as a reaction to Black Lives Matter. It has some negative connotation to some people of color. And she said, boy, this really makes me feel, I'm, you know, worried. Is this town okay? And I said, I think that they put that on the truck thinking that it was an emblem of a decal that promoted the police, you know? Not realizing, really understanding the emotional significance of that symbol.
That thin blue line has been around for a long time, well before the George Floyd stuff.
But it's interesting how it became kind of a,
And it was kind of hijacked and became a negative connotation, and we were told to take all the thin blue lines down because people are offended by it.
Yeah.
It, you know, it's the thin blue line for us, police, and this is just me talking.
yeah,
We're the thin line that stands between chaos. We're the protectors of who we're protecting, and that's what it means to us.
yeah.
But then during that, it created a lot of controversy.
And I realized that the police put it on, but maybe it's inappropriate to put on a municipal vehicle a symbol promoting a certain department. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so that's kind of like some departments don't allow it, some departments do. It's kind of up to what you as a community want to decide for your police department. So if you have strong feelings about something like that, that's kind of up to the town to decide what they want to see. Thank you. Any other comments on personal interactions?
This is not a complaint. I'm going back to your first question.
Okay,
I'm a resident of Schooner Cove, which has over 60 residents in an independent living facility. We have demands on the police somewhat regularly. And I would say that every experience that I'm familiar with, and I am on the board, they've been terrific,
great.
very responsive. And the other part of that, of course, is that it's the need for responsiveness is tremendous sometimes. And it's a real asset in the community. And it's a real asset for us in an independent living facility.
Are the nature communities like loud parties at night and?
Oh, yeah, party all.
Being able to work with both the youth and the senior citizens in your community is very important. I'm heavily invested in our older population in Bath as well as the state. So I'm glad to hear that they're responsive to the needs of your community. Do you guys know how many officers you have on at any given minute in Damariscotta? Any guesses?
Blank out was never overnight.
2 or 3, 2.
One to two, with
No one at night.
no one at some hours.
Chief, what would you like to give them as any answer here?
From 6 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock the following morning, we have one officer on. And from 2 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the morning, the county covers. And the reason for that is that 4-hour period. First of all, we just don't have the staffing to do 24-hour men. But the two o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning time frame was chosen because that time frame, the calls for service is virtually zero. But if there is a call for service, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Department will respond to it.
But everybody basically thought 2 or 3, 1.5. You thought there was more officers on duty than there is. And that kind of indicates that there's a presence, a visible presence in the community, that you see them out there, so you feel safe, yes?
No, I think it's because the budget is so high, we thought there must be.
Well, budget, we're coming up on our budget cycle and that as well. It's a trying time for all of us. You pay for services, you expect certain services, and most of the departments that I'm aware of we really try to do as much as we can with what we have available. We're always asked to kind of do more than what we have, but it is important to, if that's what you want in your community, you're gonna have to pay the taxes to pay for it. I mean, it's the part of living in a nice town like this and have a nice department. Yes.
I have a question relative to the purpose of this forum vis-a-vis the hiring of new police chief. Could you articulate that?
So
I'm sorry, I was.
this report, the things are happening at the same time, but this report will be finished relatively soon, and this is gonna be given to the town and given to the incoming chief as to, here's our azimuth check. This is where we think you guys are at. This is what we've observed, given our professional experiences. This is what we think you guys can do to make things better, right? We're not looking to say you did a bad thing here, a bad thing there. This is just like, here's where we think you're at, and here's where we think you could go to make things just a little bit more improved. So we give advice to the town about what our observations were. You can take it with a grain of salt, whatever, but this is what coming from us is what we think.
Is
So-
there any role for you to play relative to soliciting questions for the new chief to be
The Chiefs of,
incorporated in
the Chiefs of Police Association, is involved with the hiring process. We are involved with this, but they are,
Right.
other people like us are involved with the hiring process.
So if we had questions to submit, then we need to use a different venue.
You can submit them to the town manager or us, and I can get them to the committee, but it would probably end up going through the town manager.
Thank you.
Yes.
Getting back, I'm on the budget committee, and one of the issues is also when you get equipment that ages out. And then you're trying to buy replacement, either vehicles or parts. And things are just bloody expensive. And technology, you really wanna stay current on that. And it's a tough juggle. And it's not just the police department, it's the fire department, it's the schools. So that's one of the reasons why the budget might seem like it's just creeping up there, but especially when your equipment ages out. And the prices on the new fire truck are insane. And,
And unfortunately, it's little control we have that, like, police cars are expensive, fixing police cars are expensive, fire trucks, yeah, are crazy. Go ahead.
You indicated at the beginning of your presentation that this was the last part of your presentation. So do you have any preliminary thoughts that you can share about where we are, where we could use improvement? Because that might help
Yeah.
shape some of the questions we would be asking for the new.
In
police.
terms of the budget, I can kind of go through, like, the equipment they have good modern equipment. They've done a good job in the last couple of years getting everything modernized. You have the proper technology right now. You have officers are allowed to wear the external carriers. They have body cams, they have tasers. These are things that as a police chief, you have to have, right? You want to make sure your officers are safe, but you want to also make sure they have the most up-to-date tools to use to help a situation so that doesn't go, a bad way. Body cams are so important for me to kind of clear things up. If I get a complaint, I can play the video and be like, okay, this is what happened. Usually that helps liability from a town's perspective in terms of like lawsuits. But it's also a great evidentiary tool, so you may not remember everything, but you watch that video, you can be like, oh yeah, and you put that in evidence and it's great, it helps the case for prosecution. Regular maintenance of the equipment that we do have is super important, just like the facility, maintaining the facility that we have. Those are important things. There were some areas with the facility, it's obviously not designed as a police department, but it is accredited, so you met those standards there. We went over some property, evidence and property management practices that could be improved a little bit, such as a full-time employed officer that his job is to do the evidence. Right now, it's being handled by a reserve officer who used to be here, but that's something that we would recommend the new chief look into. Maintaining accreditation is a huge one, because every 3 years we get 3-year cycle. So in another year and a half, they're gonna get reaccredited if they want to maintain that accreditation. There's a lot of standards that they have to be met every single year for that.
What happens if they are not accredited?
They're just not accredited. But being accredited, it's the best practices for professional police department, and it helps with like liability insurance through the, like, I don't know if the town has Maine municipal, but it helps offset some costs there. So it's important, to me, I'm on the committee, it's important. to be
I mean, it
accredited.
sounds like something that we
It's,
would want, but
you wanna be
it
accredited.
just, because there was an if,
If you don't get accredited, you're just not accredited. Like,
Okay.
none of us were accredited until we got accredited, right? We were fine, people were doing their things. But what we saw within the state was a lot of different agencies doing things a little differently. And the lack of consistency. So we pulled everyone together. We said, here's the best practice standards. We're all gonna follow these if you wanna be accredited. Makes us more professional because this is a profession, not just a job. Did that answer your question? Other areas that we wanna look
Like the
at.
culture, the personnel, the.
Alter personnel, I mean, there wasn't any significant issues there. You've got some really good officers here. They're devoted to their communities. We did see, areas to improve on. We think that 24/7 coverage was good for a community to have if you can swing it. You cover those extra 4 hours. That might be with the addition of one additional person for on staff. Which then you could overlap supervisory a little bit better, so you have supervisors on duty more than they are now. That lowers liability. We're all about liability as police administrators here. So those were some of the recommendations. You covered patrol. Any recommendations that you saw?
No, I mean, one of the biggest things to mention to the group is when we went out to the community and talked to a lot of the business owners, it was by far positive. A lot of the comments were, we want the kind of interaction that we have with the police chief and with the officers to continue. They don't want to lose that. Having officers come in and talk to them inside their stores or check in with them just to make sure that everything's all right if they need something, or seeing them on Main Street or doing a traffic enforcement or whatever it may be. So that was a big part of it, to a person. There wasn't really anything negative to be said, even if they hadn't really had any specific interaction with the police on a law enforcement call or something like that. With the equipment that the police have, and you're right, everything is expensive. It became even more so during COVID, and it never seemed to come back down. I know that in Yarmouth, we struggle with those kinds of things, and I'm not sure how, exactly you folks are budgeting, but we try to, stay ahead, as a chief, stay ahead of what, assign a value of what age the equipment is going to be needed to be replaced. And you try to give yourself a little bit of buffer because with the budget, it might not be the year you want, it might be a year or two later. But hopefully being able to kind of build up some of that funding so that when the time comes to replace it, it isn't such a, significant hit to the community. We looked at, we talked with other police chiefs in the area. We talked to the sheriff, we talked to the communications center, we talked to the district attorney, all about the interaction that they've had with the police department, things they hope, continue, things they wish were different. If anyone had any issues or concerns, they felt they were dealt with appropriately by the previous chief. And they want that to continue, have a good open conversation. They want to make sure they keep the same kind of personal interaction with officers. It's difficult having one officer working and taking someone to the jail or and then having that time to go and talk to a dispatcher or talk to another agency because you want to come back here and serve the community. But that's something they brought up. Again, the evidence and property is being taken care of. Little places where you can improve. You're talking about recruitment and selection. That's a big thing, as the chief mentioned. It's tough to get people. It used to be you get 100 people for one or two jobs. And now if you get half a dozen for one, you feel like you hit the jackpot. So things that, ideas that we might have or things we might see to kind of bring people in. And in addition, trying to lure police in to your community and have them do a good job and attract those professional folks that you want to be representative of your community. That takes something, that you have to stand out somehow. A lot of times, a big part of it is the community and the culture that's in the police department. That goes very far, in the support of the community. And then, things like training and kind of where we see gaps that might help supervisory. There's a sergeant here, but because you work for one man shifts, it's kind of difficult to have that traditional sergeant or supervisor, line supervisor interaction with some of the staff. And I know that the chief and the other officers pick up on some of that too, but those were kind of some of the things that we did. I'm sorry.
I just want to say, why do you think there's been such a drop off of recruitment?
This is my opinion personally and not of the big chiefs, I'll say. I think it's several things. I think it's just every so often, something happens in the profession, whether it happens locally or it happens nationally or sometimes even internationally, where it causes a pause. Somebody didn't do something correctly, or someone did something that seems, maybe it was correct in practice, but in a video or the explanation of why they did it isn't good. That can turn people off. Sometimes the negative interaction, none of us got into it to be thanked all the time. But we also, no one wants to go to work and be yelled at or thought of as not a good person just because of the uniform that you wear. But I think also it's, the other opportunities. I have a couple of young kids and young 20s. And they don't want to be in the business. I think some people just don't want to work shift work. They don't want to work weekends and nights and get forced in when nobody's working. And there are so many other options out there that it's just, I think sometimes it's also a generational thing, but it ebbs and flows. I think we're kind of coming out of a deep depression. But how far we'll get out of it, I don't know, but I can tell you that we just hired somebody about 9 or 10 months ago, and we got, I think, 5 applicants. And you don't want to lower your standards. You want to make sure you select the best person because they're going to be your representative in the community. One person that you hire, by hoping that things will go right, could be the downfall, for your department. But yes, sir.
Outside of the ongoing search for the new chief and potential recommendation you have for like an evidence person, is there a need for recruits right now, or?
That's, in my opinion as well, I think that,
Specifically.
right. I think that the evidence person isn't necessarily, a full-time person that all they do is evidence. Obviously, it's just a person who's employed by the town already in the police department that then has that as an extra duty or an additional duty.
Right.
To have
Is there a gap otherwise with?
No, it's just the chief position is the only open position that they have right now. So Damariscotta traditionally has done fairly well with hiring people. I talked to, the past chief, and they went like 6, 7, 8 years without hiring anybody, I think.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
And by all intents and purposes, people currently on staff intend to stay on.
Well, that's where it comes in with the pay and benefits and being competitive with other agencies. That's where you really gotta be able to offer those things. You're gonna attract the person that wants to live and work in this community, hopefully, that wants to serve their community. There's a lack of people wanting to serve anything nowadays. So if you can attract those type of candidates from within this area, they're more apt to stick around as long as they get, competitive pay benefits and are offered opportunities, professional development, training, stuff like that. So
The difficult part about the last probably 5 years is that in Maine, there was a significant issue with, we'll call it stealing other people's officers. Because essentially that's what it was. Is that you could go to almost any department because everybody needed people and they weren't getting applicants. So if you were a certified officer, a trained, experienced officer, and you weren't a problem, you could almost write your ticket wherever you wanted to go in the state. Usually retirement transfers, all those things transfer. So we had issues where people left. I had issues where I brought someone in from another department and had to make that phone call to that chief saying, No offense, I'm giving you a heads up, but essentially, that's part of what it is, so. Not only is it the recruitment, but it's the retention piece too, in looking at, because everyone, of course, you look at what someone else has, and the grass looks greener over here, maybe it isn't. But they may try and see what that's like, so, I think it's slowed down a little of. That's a bad word, but stealing, kind of grabbing other people's, personnel. But it's still, the possibility is there every single day. I wouldn't be surprised if, someone came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. To go to another agency. If they say they're gonna get out of the business, so be it. But going to another agency, you wanna do whatever you can to keep the people that you have, good people that you have.
Plus, a lot of new officers can't afford a $500,000 house.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you look at the types of calls? That the,
Yeah,
like
we-
a lot of, okay, just.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people have said a certain percentage of calls have to do with, like summer homes, or alarms going off. Or, you know what I mean, and then I guess the local police department is notified and they send someone out. Or then at one point I heard that there were a lot of officers would go down to the hospital for different reasons. Or out to campgrounds to take care of stuff. It seems like there's a lot of different, there's certain categories of calls in which maybe there's other ways of handling them that could free up the time of the officers.
So I mean, small town police departments handle the wounded foxes, we handle their truck is blocking the road, we handle things like that. This is a touristy area, so you do have a summer influx. So they're very typical calls for service that any agency in Maine is seeing. Especially with the fact that you do have the hospital here. And for a small, when I looked at the numbers and I looked at the community and what they had to offer and that it's a service center, I was kind of surprised there was only 5 officers. I'm like, how the heck are they managing to do everything they're doing? With the few personnel that they have, but they're doing a darn good job with what they're doing, is my opinion, what I came out of this. So you can prioritize certain types of calls. If it got busy, you obviously have to triage and go to those the violent offenses, crimes against people, crimes against property would be next, and then those other types of calls, nuisance calls, loud noise complaints, barking dogs, parking violations, stuff like that. Some larger departments can have enough personnel where they can designate like civilian staff to handle that stuff. You guys may have access to like a county mental health liaison or an options clinician, which is the substance use. Some of those calls might be able to be diverted to them, but as far as I know, you don't have anybody within the town that handles those types of things, so you would have to rely on exterior help for that. There are a lot of nonprofits in Damariscotta, and there's some assets at the county level, but again, Lincoln County is a big county and it's pretty thin in terms of those types of services. But I, as a citizen, I would want to be able to call the police and say, I need help with this. And it really doesn't matter what it is, an officer is gonna come up and help us, and that's what, as a citizen, I would like to see. As a chief, sometimes we have to make those calls like, oh, we can't do lockouts anymore, we just don't have the time or the staff. And some places aren't even going and doing a traffic investigation. They're just like, oh, just call your insurance company and figure it out, some of the big other states. Did you want to add to that?
No, I think that's, there are other ways, there's actually a lot of opinions on how different kind of calls should be handled or what personnel should be used for those types of calls. Essentially, right now, the most significant issue, I think in law enforcement in Maine is that those other options don't exist, or they exist on such a small scale that they're just not readily available. So the police department becomes kind of the catch-all for everything. And even if it's us showing up saying, well, we can't necessarily take action on this, but we can help you try to find something. But usually we're going to be the first person that people call because there's usually always somebody working. But some of that is, taking advantage of options that do exist. But unfortunately, with, especially in my opinion, with mental health, substance use, that kind of thing, I think what people need is grossly underfunded. and not available as much as it should. So, Nan, you had a question, David?
Do you have to live in Damariscotta?
To be a police officer here? No. Chris?
I have a question on the mental health issue, being that there is no liaison here. Is there training of the police officers
Yeah.
in that?
Yes, we can get, it's crisis intervention training, there's mental health awareness, there's victim centered, trauma centered, victim focused training that we can get. Again, it's somewhat hard sometimes when you only have one person on duty to send that person to training. And that's why part of our study was to look at training opportunities, professional development, being able to offer those types of things to make the police department more capable to handle these types of calls and to encourage and retain the people that they do have.
Just, if I could just add to that, the Maine Criminal Justice Academy sets requirements for every law enforcement agency. One of the requirements that it has is that a certain percentage of your staff has to be trained to the minimum of mental health first aid. So, some departments, that's everybody. Some departments, that's only a small portion, but that's the minimum requirement, and you have to report that every year when you do your end of year report to the academy, that you're in compliance with that. But again, there are additional trainings above and beyond that, like crisis intervention, that's, you know, a 40-hour class that's very in-depth. You have some agencies that have, everybody has that. I can speak for Yarmouth. Everybody doesn't have it. About half of our staff does, but some of those folks got that training from another agency before they came to Yarmouth. So it can be difficult, but every department has to have a minimum amount of staff that's trained to the mental health first aid level. So.
And to sort of bring it back to the Damariscotta assessment, it's fascinating and all the other state stuff, but in our assessment, are we meeting those and are those parts of the accreditation process? Because we keep talking, you've mentioned the accreditation, but we don't know what's required in that.
Yeah, so the accreditation is like 164 different types of standards covering a wide variety of things between personnel, training, operations, all sorts of things. They've met all those standards back in December of 2023. They're gonna hopefully maintain those standards in 2026, December, when they come up for a reevaluation. Training requirements are big. There are a lot of training requirements in the accreditation program above and beyond the minimum that the academy prescribes. So it's important to stick with those. I could go into depth about accreditation.
But Damariscotta is meeting those
They met
requirements.
them in December of 2023 when they
And
got
in your
accredited.
assessment, you're seeing that we're.
Well, we're not doing an accreditation assessment, we're doing an assessment, it's different.
Oh.
It's a little different, you get an assessment for accreditation, you have standards, you check the block, do they doing this, it's very much prescribed as to what we're looking at. In the accreditation reports, it's just based on observations and it's no like opinions and recommendations outside of the scope of work. Scope of work of this is kind of gives us a little bit more freedom to make those educated opinions from a chief's standpoint, like this is what we're seeing and here's some recommendations based upon our observations, whereas we're a little bit more, it's a little bit more strict on the accreditation side. But both of them complement each other, both processes in the front and then in the back.
Yeah, so in the areas you examine, like say policies and procedures, what kinds of policies?
Oh,
are-
boy, a lot of different policies. I want to say the accreditation policies currently consist of over 70 different policies between administrative and operational. The police academy has, the board of trustees has minimum policies that have to be met. And then accreditation takes that, enhances it to become accredited.
But I'm not even talking about accreditation, I'm talking about the review that you're doing right now. I mean, like, just as a member of the community, I'd like to know, and again, I don't, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with our policies, because I don't know, but do we have policies on racial profiling?
There's bias-based policing is what it's called, yes.
Okay.
Yep, tons of different policies.
And we're also in a time where, all of a sudden, that everyone's looking at the relationships between federal and local law enforcement. And
Yeah.
it's an area of great concern to me.
So there's no policy on that. Practices have been that they're just another law enforcement agency and you have to cooperate with law enforcement. Like if a federal law enforcement comes and says we're doing this because there's a federal crime in our town, I want to be involved because I want to have oversight and cooperate to help interfere or just make sure that things are safe for my community. When I have these outside agencies coming in, it's just like if Yarmouth is running a case. And they got a person's in Bath, they're gonna be like, hey Bath, I'm in town, can we get your assistance? And we would provide that. There's no accreditation policy that covers the current immigration issues.
And to our knowledge, there isn't a local policy that specifically spells out what you can and cannot do
Okay,
with a
because
federal
that's,
agency.
I mean, because one of the big concerns that I have, and I know another number of other people, is about, if someone is encountered and they discover that they have an administrative warrant in NCIC and how that is dealt with, and, I would like to see a policy on that. But, this is something that came up recently with the sheriff's office.
So there's policies with arresting people, and if you arrest someone that's a foreign national, you have to call the consulate. There is a little bit of that in the policies and how we work with that. Typically, if you encounter someone with an administrative warrant, it's not our jurisdiction, local PD, to enforce an administrative warrant. But if there's an underlying crime that pops up, then we have to deal with it. Or if they violate a state crime while being undocumented, well, then we deal with that portion. And then you're supposed to call a phone number and let them know. And say, FYI, we pulled this guy over, he's going to 2 bridges, but.
Right,
this
but there's a
alerted-
big difference between if someone's pulled over for speeding. And there's an administrative warrant that, it's not a judicial.
Yeah, it's not,
warrant,
it's,
because.
Damariscotta PD is not,
trafficking.
you guys aren't paying them to enforce federal laws, our job is local laws, so the town, you should come up with a policy that, how you're gonna approach that.
Right, but what about policies of just, inquiring on someone's immigration status?
Again, it's not within the scope of work of a local police department to go about and knock on doors unless they have a formal relationship with ICE. And we saw how that went with who else is attempt to do that, so.
Thank you.
Second row.
Yeah, along those same lines, I shared her concerns. And I think that it seems from where I sit, that there's an awful lot of wiggle room, leeway with how cooperation is defined and how cooperation is executed. At what point is it collaboration? And crosses the line, and it just seems to me as though if you don't have it written in policy, it makes it difficult and it allows too much, too gray of an area to be left to the discretion of individual officers.
So coming from my standpoint, with the framework that we have in our current policies on how we deal with foreign nationals. To put something into practice, like to change the practices that we've been doing for the last 20 years. You wanted to change a policy that's a local decision, local level decision that the town and the police department, as long as in with their town's lawyers' advice, make sure they're complying with all the laws that they're supposed to and not violating any federal laws by, creating a policy that is illegal, right? So you've got to be able to kind of talk that through. I know in our area, we've had those conversations with our council and our city attorneys, and we've come up with a.
And you said that you're required to cooperate, that law enforcement agencies are required to cooperate.
In terms of
with other
not
law enforcement
violating, like, we're not, so. If we get a foreign national, we have, by policy, we have to call the consulate and say, hey, we just picked up your person, what do you wanna do with this person? This is like, say we got a Canadian citizen. And they're arrested for something, we're supposed to call the Canadian consulate and say, hey, your person is at jail. The guidance that I put out for my people is if you get someone that you're dealing with a traffic stop and pull someone up and they come alerted on the computer system as having a warrant or something. And they say, call this number and let this agency know that so-and-so was just pulled over in Bath. They're gonna call that number and say, so-and-so was just pulled over in Bath. They don't have to do anything other than that.
And that doesn't, that could be either a judicial or administrative warrant that pops up in a system that says call, or are they different?
Yeah, I don't know the exact, you guys are trying to go down a road that is outside of the assessment.
Which one is,
Yeah.
which I'm really trying to just understand.
So, you know, if you get someone that's a foreign national, you call, Homeland Security, there's a number, and you say, hey, so-and-so, we just pulled so-and-so over. If there's no state charges that we're holding them on, we have no obligation to hold that person, right? So they're gonna be cut loose, you know, unless the feds say, I'm gonna be there in 5 minutes, right?
Or unless there's an underlying criminal issue, in which case the judge signs a warrant, they're commanding law enforcement to take that
Right,
person.
that's a totally different.
Right, yep.
Thing than what I'm talking about.
Gets me.
On the same issue, since you started asking us, I'm not. Being one question is sort of what's happening now, but as I understand it, we're talking a little bit about like, what's the future gonna look like, right? And I think it's really easy to confuse situations, because this is where the conversation's gone. Of someone who happens to be a non-US citizen and has committed some kind of a serious crime, and that is certainly one category that has to be handled. There's also actually a much larger category, because the reality is that immigrants documented to not commit crimes at about half the rate of US citizens. That's their federal and state data showing that. So the question becomes how, and then sure, I presume you're aware that there have been multiple cases in the state. Not sort of saying here, they're not speaking to this, you know, any particular complaint about anything in this town, but just thinking about sort of what's the future gonna look like, right? Because, I mean, the reality is between the need for summer labor and the need for construction labor, whether people like it or not, if people want to have people doing jobs, the diversity here is gonna go up. It's just, I mean, it work cheaper. And as has been commented, there are certainly people who feel uncomfortable here, justifiably or not, right? It's just partly just a question of demographics and people's experiences elsewhere, right? So these questions arise about, are there going to be policies about how sort of incidental interactions happen? For example, there have been people elsewhere in the state who were pulled over for like a taillight out, I think was the particular case that the ACLU actually picked up and is now a national precedent. And that person's English was not very good. The cop called, I forget if it was ICE or Border Patrol, for quote translation. The guy's name was on our list. He got picked up, he got locked up. He's been moved all over the country. He's probably getting deported. He was trying to run a construction business. Different people have different opinions on whether that's okay. Those are conversations that are really pending, and I know they're not easy. But I mean, there are a number of us who've been talking about this recently, and it seems like there should be ways to have those conversations, right? Because otherwise we're sort of going, well, what is the policy? What do they do? Are they gonna, you know what I mean? I mean,
I think that you're right. There are places to have that conversation. That's not part of our assessment in terms of deciding whether or not you should or shouldn't have one. But as a community, you have, you know, the ability to come and speak with your police department, with either different officers or with the chief. You have the ability to go to your town manager or your select board. And that's where those issues, when you have a community issue that's concerning to a lot of folks, that's where that needs to be brought up. And then the community can decide, you know, what's appropriate, what isn't, and then try to make those changes that are appropriate legally and community driven values, that kind of thing. So it isn't necessarily part of our bailiwick to be able to do that or to look at that, but those kinds of things, and that's, you're not alone. A lot of communities are going through the situations like that.
Chief, if I may,
Yeah, please.
I've had the opportunity to talk to several individuals about the specifics going on like that. I think right now, one of the biggest issues is there was a law passed, or there was a law that was enacted by the legislature here in Maine that the governor has not signed. I think it's LD 126. I can't remember the exact number. That is specifically, yeah, it specifically deals with law enforcement in Maine cooperating or assisting with Homeland Security or Border Patrol. The problem right now with a lot of towns, and I know I've talked with the town manager about this, and we've had conversations with the select board, is everybody's waiting to see if that's gonna get signed, because if that gets signed, it kind of takes the onus off of towns to do their own policies, which potentially could liable a town. So right now, we're kind of in that limbo status. I know Governor Mills pushed that off to the next session. If she signs it, then for all practical purposes, the towns don't have to come up with policies because it is now gonna be a state law. If she doesn't sign it, then I think it does put it back to the towns, and counties to look at that and have a very deep conversation, not only with the town folks, but with, lawyers to find out what is the liability if we do a policy? What is the liability if we don't do a policy? And where do we stand? Obviously, community input is very important. But as a town manager and as the acting chief of police right now, one of the things and the select board, one of the things that we're always concerned about is liability. And I know Chief Booth mentioned that, and I've been in the business for 48 years and I've been in a command position, and liability is one of the things you look at all the time. You're constantly reviewing the liability. So I think right now we're kind of in that limbo status, and hopefully the governor's gonna decide to do something and at least let us know where we stand one way or the other, so that we can proceed further.
Couple questions over here, front row first.
So in the areas you say you examined, you talked about community relations and you talked about policies and procedures. And I'm assuming your assessment is where we are and that you're making recommendations. So even though you say you can't tell us what to do, can you formally recommend, based on the conversation you've just heard, that our town do look at those specific policies? Because in case governor does not sign it,
Right.
it then gives us a document that says, but we still need to look at it.
And involve the town, because,
And that there's community involved in it.
because you're hearing from a lot of town members that we want this. I mean, I frankly would have liked to have had this be a part of the chief search, but it is not.
For me, that isn't something that I think that my opinion is, whether or not you should or shouldn't have it. That's an individual town decision.
But your
Because,
recommendation could be that the town
That if-
reviews the policy, not just, you don't have to tell us what the.
no,
policy is.
I think that it's well within our right, well within our ability to say, you know, if during this feedback, the community had, questions about, particular policies and, whether new policies should be enacted or whether existing policies, are adequate. And that should be, you know, discussed at the town and community level. That's.
That would be helpful.
To single one out and say that, you know, and again, not to discount anyone who's here. But you're a section of the community. I don't know Damariscotta other than what we're doing here. So remember, we're taking a sample size of, you know, that's something, those kinds of issues that are considerable. And on a lot of people's minds, that's something that there should be probably something specifically for that issue to be addressed. But it's not, you know, I think any community, if they have questions about their police department, their policies of the police department, talk to the police department, see what they have for policies. Generally speaking, most of our policies, the vast majority of our policies, at least here are public. If you want a copy, I'm happy to give you a copy. We can discuss. There are some things that have some operational things that aren't necessarily public. But if there's a question about, you know, the police department or the way that any department in town is handling something, that's a community decision. But that's how you get those issues addressed, bringing that up and having that community feedback.
Second row.
Unrelated to my question, but related to your question, maybe it'd be a county issue. So that we could have a larger, you know, you cross into Newcastle, you don't really want to make a thing so on a topic this intense. So that's just a thought. My question is about guns. Are citizens restricted to a certain amount? Do they, are they entitled to have, hidden weapons? Are they supposed to be registered?
State of Maine does not require registering of weapons. You can carry concealed, you can carry open without a permit. You can apply for a concealed weapons permit. Most people do it because it's reciprocity with other states, but there's no requirement for that. So you could own 1,000 guns if you wanted. And that's your right as a citizen, at least in this state, it's very forgiving for gun ownership.
Yeah, cause people are going crazy at McDonald's when they get the wrong size order, and I'm so pleased that we don't receive that. But I'm just thinking that,
Maine is still one of the safest states. We have some laws on the books that can help us with mental illness and gun possession. Part of being a good community policing department is knowing your community and knowing those people that might need extra help and kind of making sure that they get that help.
okay.
So, I mean, things are, I think, pretty good here with keeping tabs on those things. So you should
Yes.
feel safe being outside. Yeah.
Just the future.
Did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to comment that accreditation is really a pretty big deal. In that, you have to provide evidence that you meet the standards. And I worked for a law enforcement agency at large one, that lost its accreditation, and it lost its accreditation not because it didn't necessarily meet the standards, but the resources required in documenting and producing evidence that every one of those standards is met is incredibly resource intensive, and we simply didn't have the resources.
And were we talking Kalea? The California accreditation program or something different?
No, this is a correctional
Okay,
facility
the
accreditation.
main law enforcement program is realistic standards.
Mhm.
It's, they took the best of all of the different accreditation programs and made something that fits for the state. And it's a lot more achievable than some of the larger accreditation programs, which require a lot of finances to manage. Damariscotta, for example, a 5-person department is accredited. I've done accreditations for smaller departments than that.
Mhm.
And it's achievable. I'm the accreditation manager for Bath for our agency, and it's very little cost associated. There is some time associated with getting things in order. But it's very much more manageable than some of the national level accreditations. Some
Did
of
it
the-
make your job easier in conducting an assessment? The fact that knowing that they met the standards?
It did, because we had that as a background. We know that their policies and procedures as of December of 23 were up. Modernized, the best practices, met the board of trustees standards, met the accreditation standards. Good to go on that. You know, being accredited means you're a professional, and at least in Maine, you're a professional Maine law enforcement agency. And you guys should be proud of that. That's a
Absolutely.
huge achievement. In the back row.
Yeah, what percentage of police departments in Maine are accredited?
Every year, we're getting more and more. I think right now, we're at about 40-ish agencies that have been accredited or seeking accreditation. Some of us have gone through the process twice now.
40%?
No, 40
departments.
Out of how many?
I don't know off the top of my head how many departments.
100 to 600.
No,
It's getting better. There's getting more and more.
I mean, Maine's a small state, but there are a lot of different agencies that would qualify for accreditation. To your point, ma'am, I can't see you, but, you know, if you're part of a larger national accreditation, like CALIA or another standard, you then meet the requirements for Maine's accreditation. But most departments can't do that. That sometimes requires a full-time person who just does that, like you said, just tries to maintain those standards and, but the thing about, MLEAP, which is the Maine Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, is it's voluntary. So from my perspective, and I hope from your community's perspective as well, like this is something that the town and the department voluntarily subjected themselves to. They want to meet those standards. They want to prove to their community that they're a professional organization. It doesn't matter the size of the department of the community that you live in, like this is a profession. And folks want to make sure that they're doing a professional job for their community. That's why I did it in Yarmouth. That's why most people do it. And so it really is it's a bonus for the community. It's a way for the community to be, another way for them to be proud of their department, knowing that they're professionals and they want to meet these standards. They're not being forced to.
Thank you.
I know that you're not evaluating on like a pass fail scale. Is there any like particular thing that could be like catastrophic to the department? In your opinion?
The high liability things is the lawsuits, and what drives lawsuits is excessive uses of force. getting in a car chase and crashing the car and killing civilians that are not involved. Those are the high profile, high liability things. Luckily, this is not seeing a lot of pursuits, not seeing a lot of any excessive force complaints, deadly force issues in this town. That's kind of goes to the professionalism of the department and the officer using sound judgment, right? Those are the things that you really, as a town, you want to keep tabs on. That's why there's mandatory policies through the board of trustees that they have to follow. Getting back to policies and procedures and getting back to training. So those are the things, there's really nothing that we've seen so far raises any huge red flags. There's some areas that we need to tighten up on. It's been a kind of a difficult adjustment with the transition of chiefs and the selecting of a new chief. So some things have kind of gone to the wayside that needs to quickly get picked back up, but there's no showstoppers here.
Well, you had mentioned that you were surprised at the ability of fire officers to manage a service center. So like, for example, if one was recruited by another agency and we had trouble filling with recruits, like, would that significantly handicap?
It would, I mean, because the less personnel you have, if you're out short one or two, like I can absorb one or two losses in my department because I'm larger, but
Yeah,
losing one of five it takes a big hit.
Yeah.
And you do have 3 reserve officers currently that can help out. But using reserves also increases a little bit of liability because they're not as well trained, they don't have as much experience, it all depends on that, so. But just Damariscotta, it's like, it's got the hospital, it's got the Y, it's got all these stores, it's got the pumpkin fest, it's got the campground in the summer. Knowing that there's only 5 officers allotted, it was kind of like, wow, it's not a lot. Like in my mind, I'm very risk averse, right? I'm officer safety. We never roll less than 2 officers in City Bath, right? Because we want to have that backup right there. I worry about things, but.
This community has just approved a comprehensive plan that a lot of people, I'm not one of them, but work very, very diligently, very hard on to look into the next 10 years, year by year. From my reading of it, there's quite a bit that applies to security, police work, etc., in the community. To what extent will your report or your work bring that forward to the process of bringing in a new police officer?
So we did not look at the new comp plan. When was that recently signed? So I had
December of 2024.
last December. We haven't looked at that, wasn't part of the study. But like, what is the gist of the comp plan? Is there a security issue that you're trying to address or just maintain a level of security?
Well, there's issues of safety in there, that comes to my mind first. And in the downtown area and related to pedestrian, to bicycle, et cetera. And it seems to me that that's looking forward.
Yep.
It's an important component of what the community wants, because the community did approve it. And I just think it would be valuable for you in your reporting and your coming back to the community to help that plan be realized.
Yeah, I can take a look at that. maybe
It's
on the
384 pages, so if maybe you wanna just focus
side. Give me the quick
on,
notes.
right, well, so our values statement in there does say
It's
that
very
we are
accessible.
welcoming, healthy and diverse community. So that is one of our statements in our values. So if you agree that it would be good for you guys before finishing your assessment, that you at least read the value statements and where the community.
Probably similar to our community and his community.
Yeah.
We just did a comp plan recently as well. I know how big they are. Ours is kind of, luckily, our folks were able to kind of break it down, especially for us to say, like, here's areas that are specifically related to your department or your profession. And this is, so I'm not sure if that's your comp plan is broken down like that, but that makes it a little bit easier instead of having to go through and read things that legitimately I probably won't understand. But yeah, it does kind of set a tone and kind of capture a moment of the community to say, this is what, at this point in looking forward, this is what the community has put forward as their wants and needs and things like that. So, yeah, it is important.
Traffic safety is something covered under patrol operations. but it's big for all communities. I know in Bath, we have committees and subcommittees that deal with different aspects of traffic, pedestrians, bicycles, overall traffic engineering. And if that's, you know, Damariscotta's only got 5 officers. I sit on the transportation board in Bath, so I'm heavily involved in future planning 5, 10 years out with new developments, and are we gonna change intersections? And we do crime analysis, crash analysis. How many speeders are getting caught here? What are the captured radar speeds? Cause I have devices that measure, all that stuff is kind of like problem-oriented policing, where we have a problem over here, we're gonna take a look at it, gather data, come up with a solution, work together with, as a community. I expect that would continue in the future with Damariscotta. You know, there's only what 13 town employees altogether. So there's not a lot of bodies to do a lot of heavy lifting on that. That's where you may have committee involvement through volunteers. But I'll take a look at that. Downtown, I know the downtown, the crosswalks, the pedestrians, that's an issue you guys deal with because it goes right through downtown and everybody's going off to the different areas in the peninsula and. But hopefully your police department's keeping tabs on the accidents and monitoring things as best they can and sitting out on Main Street, making sure people are being safe. Yes,
In answer to the gentleman's question, approximately 35% of municipal police and sheriff's departments in Maine have achieved accreditation.
35%. I think the number's rising, but.
There were 130 total.
And I don't quote me on
I didn't wanna
the
get on my phone and check.
It's
I
40
just love that we could all
to
just.
50.
Last thing I wanted to give you a different number, but yeah.
But no, I think you guys should be proud of the accreditations. I'm on the committee, I do the assessments, I'm accredited myself. It's like, I can't see not doing that again, because it would be. But frankly, unprofessional, like, we were just giving up, it's too hard work, we don't wanna see that, so. So we're getting close to the end here. Is there any last items that need to be addressed in terms of the Damariscotta Police Department functionings, operations, facility, equipment, interactions with the community? I think we've captured some good points. I'm hearing mostly favorable things. I'm hearing some things that we would like to see happen, and that's all, you know, food for thought for the incoming administration. So I appreciate the select board and the town manager.
Kudos to the department.
Thank you guys all for coming.
If I could real quick,
Yes.
this is the end of my 48-year career. This is my last stop, and I'd like to thank the town manager and the select board for making me the interim chief, bringing me back out of retirement. I kind of look at this as a crowning achievement in my 48-year career. I came to Damariscotta Police Department 6 years ago as my last stop before I retire, and I couldn't have found a better place. It's been-
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. See you. Thank you guys. Safe. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's gonna be interesting, right? I know, you know, they're very. Yeah, so. Yeah, no later. No later. That's a shoot. I should.
That's not it.
Danielle.